Hi there, and welcome to Ku English. In this series, we explore the lives of amazing people and help you improve your English at the same time. Ready? Let's dive in. Herbert Alexander Simon, Legacy, Influence, and the Price of a Life, Part 4. Chapter 1, A Mind That Never Stopped Working. By the time Herbert Alexander Simon entered the later decades of his life, many scholars would already have considered their work complete. A Nobel Prize, dozens of books, and international recognition might have encouraged a quieter existence. Simon did not slow down. If anything, his intellectual curiosity seemed to grow even stronger with age. At Carnegie Mellon University, where he spent most of his academic career, Simon remained deeply involved in research, teaching, and conversation. His office was rarely silent. Students and colleagues visited frequently, bringing questions about economics, psychology, artificial intelligence, and organizational behavior. Simon welcomed these discussions. He had always believed that knowledge grew through dialogue rather than isolation. When young researchers described their projects, Simon listened carefully. Instead of giving simple answers, he often asked questions that forced them to examine their assumptions more closely. Some students later recalled that speaking with Simon felt like entering a fast-moving current of ideas. His mind moved quickly from one concept to another, connecting subjects that others treated as separate. To him, the boundaries between disciplines had always seemed artificial. Human beings make decisions. Human beings solve problems. Human beings build organizations, and increasingly, human beings design machines that attempt to imitate thinking. All of these topics belonged to the same intellectual landscape. During the 1980s and 1990s, Simon continued working on models of human problem-solving. With colleagues and students, he refined computational theories of cognition programs, designed not only to perform tasks, but also to represent the processes humans use when thinking. These models attempted to explain how people search for solutions, how they store knowledge in memory, and how they navigate complex problems step by step. For Simon, computers remain tools for understanding the mind rather than replacing it. He often emphasized that human intelligence was deeply shaped by limitations. The mind does not calculate endlessly. It searches, simplifies, and focuses attention on manageable pieces of a problem. Paradoxically, these limits make intelligent behavior possible. Without limits, decision-making would become paralyzing. A mind trying to examine every possible option would never act. Simon's ideas began influencing many fields. Economists studying behavioral decision-making recognized that bounded rationality explained patterns. Traditional theory could not. Psychologists investigating cognitive processes adopted computational models inspired by Simon's work. Researchers in artificial intelligence explored problem-solving techniques that resembled human strategies. Gradually, Simon's once unconventional ideas became part of mainstream thinking. Yet he remained cautious about claims that machines would soon replicate the full richness of human intelligence. Early in his career, he had made optimistic predictions about artificial intelligence. Some had proven too ambitious. Progress in AI was slower and more complicated than many researchers initially expected. Simon accepted this reality without embarrassment. Science moves through trial and revision. Predictions are not failures. They are invitations to continue exploring. Even as technology advanced, Simon continued returning to the central mystery that had fascinated him since his youth. How does the human mind make decisions within a world that is far too complex to understand completely? It was a question large enough to occupy a lifetime. Chapter 2, Misunderstandings and Quiet Influence. Fame does not always guarantee understanding. Although Herbert Simon received many honors during his lifetime, his ideas were sometimes misunderstood or simplified in ways that did not fully capture their meaning. One common misunderstanding involved the concept of bounded rationality. Some critics interpreted the theory as a claim that humans are irrational or incapable of logical thinking. Simon never intended such a conclusion. On the contrary, he believed human beings are remarkably capable problem solvers. What he questioned was the assumption of perfect rationality. Traditional economic models imagined decision-makers who possess unlimited information and infinite computational power. Simon argued that such models ignored the real conditions under which decisions occur. People operate with incomplete knowledge. They have limited time. Their attention can focus on only a small number of possibilities at once. Within these constraints, individuals develop strategies that allow them to function effectively. They simplify complex situations, rely on experience, and search until they find solutions that are satisfactory rather than optimal. These strategies are not signs of failure. They are the practical tools of intelligence. Over time, Simon's perspective helped inspire the field now known as behavioral economics, which examines how real human behavior differs from idealized economic models. Researchers such as Daniel Kahneman and others later expanded these insights, demonstrating that psychological processes play a central role in economic decision-making. Meanwhile, Simon's work in artificial intelligence also influenced generations of computer scientists. Early AI programs created by Simon and his colleagues explored symbolic reasoning, using logical representations to model thought processes. Although later approaches to AI would incorporate statistical learning and neural networks, the foundational idea that cognition could be studied through computational models remained central. Perhaps Simon's most lasting influence lay in his intellectual style. He never accepted rigid boundaries between disciplines. For him, the study of human thought required contributions from mathematics, psychology, economics, computer science, and philosophy. This interdisciplinary approach was not always fashionable in academic institutions organized around separate departments. Yet Simon persisted in crossing those boundaries. Many of his students followed the same path. They became researchers who felt comfortable exploring problems from multiple perspectives rather than confining themselves to a single tradition. Simon also maintained a personal modesty that surprised some observers. Despite his achievements, he rarely spoke about his career in terms of personal triumph. He preferred discussing ideas, puzzles, and unanswered questions. Perhaps this attitude reflected his view of science itself. Knowledge is never finished. Every discovery opens new problems. Every answer invites further inquiry. By the late 1990s, Simon had spent more than half a century exploring the nature of decision-making and human cognition. His influence extended across continents and disciplines. But like many thinkers who dedicate their lives to ideas, Simon's greatest legacy could not be measured simply by awards or titles. It existed in the questions he had taught others to ask. Chapter 3: The Price and the Meaning of a Life. Herbert Alexander Simon passed away on February 9, 2001, at the age of 84. By that time, the intellectual world he had helped shape looked very different from the one he had entered as a young student in the 1930s. Artificial intelligence had become an established scientific field. Cognitive science united psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, and computer science in the study of the mind. Economists increasingly acknowledge that human decisions are influenced by cognitive limitations and psychological processes. Many of these developments carried traces of Simon's influence. Yet Simon himself rarely spoke about legacy in grand terms. He understood that ideas evolve over time. Scholars reinterpret them, adapt them, sometimes challenge them. No thinker controls the future path of their work. In quiet moments, Simon occasionally reflected on the nature of scientific creativity. He believed that progress often begins with curiosity rather than ambition. A young person notices a contradiction between theory and experience. Instead of ignoring it, they investigate further. Years of effort follow. Most attempts lead to partial answers or unexpected difficulties. But occasionally, a new perspective emerges that changes how others see the world. Simon's own journey followed that pattern. As a child in Milwaukee, he had grown up in a house filled with books, music, and conversation. His parents had encouraged curiosity rather than certainty. Those early influences shaped the habits of mind that guided his entire life. He learned to ask questions. He learned to doubt simple explanations. and he learned to search patiently for patterns within complexity. The price of such a life was not always visible from the outside. Academic research demands long hours of concentration. It requires persistence through periods of uncertainty when ideas fail to produce immediate results. It often means pursuing questions that few people initially understand. But Simon never described these challenges as sacrifices. To him, the process of inquiry was itself a source of satisfaction. Near the end of his life, when asked about his achievements, Simon sometimes returned to a simple observation: the human mind is capable of remarkable creativity, even within its limitations. That insight had guided his work from the beginning. Human beings are not perfect calculators. They are explorers. They navigate an overwhelming world by building models, asking questions, and searching for solutions that are good enough to move forward. In many ways, Herbert Simon lived exactly the kind of thinking he described. He explored problems that crossed disciplinary boundaries. He accepted uncertainty as part of discovery, and he remained curious until the final years of his life. Today, long after his passing, students still encounter the ideas he introduced decades ago: bounded rationality, satisficing computational models of cognition. These concepts continue shaping research in economics, psychology, artificial intelligence, and organizational theory. But perhaps Simon's most enduring legacy is simpler than any single theory. He showed that understanding the human mind requires both humility and imagination. Humility, because our reasoning is always limited. Imagination, because within those limits we can still build ideas powerful enough to change how the world understands itself. And in the quiet space between those two truths, Herbert Alexander Simon spent his life thinking. Thanks for learning with Ku English. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.